Hello, I'm Dylan.
And I'm Keon.
This is Trust Your Doctor, that podcast with a school for vampires, because this week we watched Vampires of Venice.
Written by Toby Whithouse.
Whithouse,
whatever.
Directed by Johnny Campbell.
And aired on May 8th, 2010.
The original title of this story was Vampires in Venice. And they're like, no, Vampires of Venice. Anyway, I'm going to start with some production information, which isn't too exciting because this story doesn't have a really long conception.
I mean, the big thing about this, when you're watching it, if you haven't looked anything up right, is this actually in Venice?
No.
And the answer, disappointingly, is no.
But there is a reason why it's not Venice.
Not disappointingly, is that it's in Croatia somewhere. No, but yeah, the reason why they went to Croatia to do this story and apparently another story as well.
Vincent and the Doctor, because Vincent and the Doctor is set in France. And the BBC looked at its ledger, looked at its budget, and went, "We can only fund one overseas filming location this season, Stephen. You got to figure this out." And he was like,
if we go to Croatia, we can do sort of both. I guess there are cities that resemble Venice and Paris enough in Croatia that it's a good location to do that. Sort of like how a lot of movies that are set in New York are done in Toronto.
A lot of movies just in general are done in Toronto. Even LA. Toronto stands in for basically everything because it's cheaper to film in Toronto than to actually film in LA. The story started, Toby was like, I'm going to write a story about Doctor trapped in a maze. And then Stephen was like,
interesting.
He was like, hang on a minute, dude. We got Flesh and Stone, which is kind of similar because the Doctor's trapped in a labyrinth. So Toby shelved it, and it comes back next season in an episode called The God Complex, which, looking at the list of all the episodes...
Welcome to the Moffat era. Just kidding.
The God Complex is the one episode that I remember the least of. And he was like, okay, well, I'll come up with something else, because Moffat was like, well, I want this to be like a good mid-season jumping on point for people. Because I want to bring Rory into the TARDIS.
Which this is actually, a lot of this falls in line with, the sort of theory I had last week about that sort of mid-season finale almost.
So I want this to be a mid-season jumping on point for people. He's like, okay, well, we'll bring Rory into the TARDIS and I'll write it like from the perspective of Rory.
Bad move.
Good move. Trust me, after next week, you'll be like, good move.
Oh, boy.
And he's like, okay, actually not next week, 2 weeks from now. I keep thinking the Silurian one is next week, but it's not. It's 2 weeks from now.
Heck yeah, the Silurians are back.
So he wrote the story. He's like, well, okay, so we've got Rory and they're like getting married, so let's make it like almost like a destination wedding kind of thing, a lovers date thing. So we'll pick Venice, city of romance, except for Paris. He's like, what about vampires? People love vampires. He's like, boom, Vampires in Venice. Vampires of Venice. What? That's how the story came to be.
Yep.
The first scenes filmed were the ones in Croatia, probably unsurprisingly.
Which is most of the story. There are only a few things actually filmed back in the UK.
Yeah, exterior shots for the house Calviari are filmed in Croatia. Basically all the exterior shots. The interior courtyard was filmed in the mayor's house, I think.
Yeah,
the interior of the other guy's house. I'm forgetting his name, but the interior of his house is filmed in Wales, in a castle, actually.
Who? Are you thinking of
the dad of Isabella?
Yeah, that's Guido.
Is that Guido?
Yep.
Thought Guido was the... never mind. So the interior of his house was filmed in Wales, not in the castle, but it was filmed in Wales.
As was the intro sequence thing with the bachelor party.
Yeah, actually, the bachelor party was the first thing filmed. Sorry, I remember noting this because they filmed one thing in order, but then after the bachelor party, they went to Croatia. They filmed all the location stuff. They came back. They filmed the interior of Guido's house. They filmed the interior shots of the house. That was the one that was filmed in the castle. This is the first story to actually have footage that was shot after the 10th Doctor regenerated, which is a bunch of pickup shots that they filmed. The Doctor in the clock tower, just a bunch of pickup shots like that, which they filmed. And that was the completion of the story.
Yep. So really nothing much interesting going on there.
Yeah, and they had to cut down the part. There's a flower girl in this story. She apparently had a bigger or an extended scene, and they had to cut that down for time. Already this story actually runs a little bit over. This story's 47 minutes, I think.
Yeah, it's 48.
Or 48.
Which isn't too radically like over. There are a few that are 48. Most of them are like 44-ish, 45.
Yeah.
But it's not too long, I think.
But like we said, the story begins with the doctor crashing Rory's stag party. He's at the bar. He calls Amy and he's like, Amy, I've gone 7 hours without telling you I love you, and that is a travesty.
It starts actually with, it starts in the past, right, with 1580 in What's-Her-Face's, Rosanna's sort of school, I guess. We
get a pre-stinger. We get a pre-stinger stinger.
So there's this woman, Rosanna, I forget her last name, but she had one, Calvieri, I think.
It's Calvieri.
She runs a school for quote-unquote gifted girls, I guess, all girls. And we get Guido and Isabella, who are father and daughter, and Isabella wants to enroll in this school.
Right.
And she is. There's really no interview process. She's just taken in immediately.
Well, it's interesting here because Guido's like, she's my world, and then Rosanna's like, we will take your world then. And I thought that was interesting way to word it.
Yeah, especially because right off the bat, you already know that they're the vampires, and the vampires are aliens, because this is Doctor Who.
Yeah.
So it would be a big shock if they, if a Doctor Who story somewhere down the line were like, no, they're actually just vampires. Or they're not aliens, they're actually just werewolves. They're not aliens, they're not, that's just it. They're not aliens, that's what it would be. But hey, never gotten that so far, I think.
Yeah, I think.
Pretty sure they're all explained away as being aliens.
Yeah, I think so. And then we
really
cut to
looking aliens.
Rory's stag party. He's like, I love you. It's been 7 hours since I've told you I love you, and that's unacceptable. He's drunk, obviously.
He's calling Amy, and you get the impression that this is minutes after the Doctor and Amy leave at the end of Flesh and Stone.
Yeah.
And you pan up to Amy's wedding dress. Now, I've never heard the term stag party. I guess it's a British term for bachelor party.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I got.
They're all at the bar drinking a lot. They all have shirts on that have like a heart and a picture of Rory and Amy in. And then they wheel in this cake, and then the Doctor pops out and he's like, hey, there's this nice lady named, I don't remember what he says, like Lisa standing outside. She's in a bikini. Should probably let her in.
By the way, Amy, your fiance, just kissed me, so you're going to come with me. And the Doctor's like, oh, I should have worded that better.
Rory is devastated by this. He immediately sobers up. The alcohol immediately all evacuates his system. Everybody else is like, what the hell? And then title sequence, and then Amy, Rory, and the Doctor in the TARDIS, and he's like, look, I'm not okay with Amy trying to kiss me. I'm not okay with being in the middle of this shit. So you guys are going to figure the nonsense out right now. I'm going to take you somewhere on a nice date. I'm going to figure it out.
Well, this is the interesting thing. In this scene, the Doctor's trying to explain what the TARDIS is and what they're doing, and Rory's like, yeah, I got it right. You're a time traveler. This thing's bigger on the inside, and we're going to go to some other space and time. The Doctor's like, don't say that. I love explaining this. You know what you've just taken away from me?
And Rory's like, yeah, well, after Prisoner Zero, I went and read up on all the latest scientific theories, so...
Maybe he hacked into UNIT. I mean, it's pretty easy to do.
Well, yeah, Mickey did it. Mickey the idiot.
Now, here's the start of this story's problems. And by the start of this story's problems, I mean the inclusion of Rory.
I don't think including Rory was a problem at all.
It down
I don't think so.
Look, I just hate the love triangle that this is turning into, And I think the story would have been better just without Rory in general. I'll have to see where it goes from here. But man.
But I think including Rory was a good idea because it differentiates us from like Rose and Martha, where the Doctor and the companion actually do fall in love. I mean, not so much with Martha, but we get here the Doctor goes, no, I'm not letting you kiss me. I'm not letting you fall in love with me. You have a fiance. You're getting married. When he meets Rose has a boyfriend. Long term, by the way, Mickey and Rose been together for a long time.
Since they're like 5 or whatever.
And then the Doctor comes in and he doesn't care. He's just a homewrecker. The 11th Doctor's like, no, I will not be privy to this. I will not participate in this.
Well, here's the thing. The way they do it in this episode, the love triangle type stuff, I mean, it's no secret that I just dislike romance and pretty much everything. But a lot of this episode is dedicated to it. Like, a lot. And I didn't like that.
Yeah, well, that's... Because it's introducing Rory. It's like, here's Rory. Yeah. Everybody, meet Rory. He's our guy.
If he Rory,
he's our man. If he can't do it, nobody can. Just wait. By the end of the season, you'll be like, damn, I love Rory.
Well, that's what happened with Mickey and to an extent Jackie as well. So
character development.
I still think Amy is the best companion of the new series so far, despite all of this.
Despite all of this.
Yeah.
Despite the fact that she tried to cheat on her fiancé with the doctor.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they land in Venice, and he's like, look, it's 1582. Was it 1582?
1580, I think.
1580. 1586?
Yeah, it was 1580. I remember there's a title card thing at the beginning. And Rory's like, oh, I'm going to be getting married in 130 or 430 years. And that was actually like the correct, exact like amount of years.
And it was a funny line. I thought so anyway.
It wasn't that funny.
You never think anything's funny.
Because it's not. Look, this show's sense of humor doesn't conform to my messed up standards.
Yeah, and that's a problem.
For the show or for me? Actually, don't answer that.
So they go out and they're like, man, it's Venice. Cool. And then they see Guido running up to these... There's these women walking and they're veiled.
Right, veiled women. And right away, all right, these are the vampires. They can't get in the light or else they'll sparkle. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. But Guido runs up
Twilight.
He's like... Hashtag Team Edward.
Hashtag Team Blake. Check out a Blake 7 podcast, Zenith.
Right, who's Blake opposing? Because there's Team Edward and there's Team...
There's Team Blake and there's Team Avon.
Okay, so what's the other guy's name from Twilight? Edward?
Jacob.
Jacob, right. I guess we can do Doctor and Rory.
Hashtag Team Rory all the way.
I'm not on either of those sides. Anyway, Guido runs up and he's like, where's my daughter? You guys took my daughter. And he's unmasking the girls. And
he finds her, and she doesn't really recognize him, but she does, but she doesn't want to go with him. And then he gets beat down by the son, by Francesco's son.
Francesco. No, that's Francesco, I think.
Francesco, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Francesco, because Rosanna's his mom.
Right.
And the doctor's like, that's kind of weird. Let's go investigate. And Rory's like, what?
The strange part about this scene is that they go do something else for a minute or two, and then they go meet up with Guido. So it's interesting how they were able to find him again.
They just kind of walk around and they're like, oh, look, it's Guido.
Yeah, I'm sure Venice in the 1580s wasn't, nearly as big as it is now, but you think of the scope of cities now and you're like, all right, millions of people, when that wasn't necessarily the case back then. What they think of as a city, what you think of as what's considered a city maybe in 1580 would just be like a town or maybe even a small town today.
Well, they get stopped by someone who's like, how'd you get in? There's the plague. And the doctor's like, here's our papers. And he hands them the psychic paper. I think it's the first time psychic papers appeared for the 11th Doctor.
Yeah, I believe so. Well, he tried to use it, I think, in 11th Hour, and it didn't work, if I remember correctly.
Oh, maybe. But he hands it to him. He's like, oh, this says you're all good. Papers are good. And he's like, yeah, we're all good. I thought the plague got wiped out 100 years ago. And he's like, not in Venice. Not in the outside world, only in Venice or something like that. And he's like, oh, Madame Calvier, she's keeping us all safe or whatever.
Right, so you get the idea.
That's suspicious.
You get the idea that they're sort of quarantined here.
Right.
That doesn't really come into. It comes into play, I guess, but it's never actually touched on specifically.
It's never a huge thing.
Right.
It's just there. The doctor meets up with Guido and he explains that, his daughter joined the school, but all the people in the school are weird now. They are veiled and they come out and they barely ever come out. And he just thinks it's really suspicious. And the doctor's like, well, let's investigate. So they come up with this plan.
Guido has already tried to break in multiple times, but he wasn't ever able to.
Guido runs up to the gate and he's like, let me in. And the doctor sneaks around the side to a side gate and unlocks it and gets in with the sonic screwdriver. And he's inside and he looks in the moon. He's like, wow, handsome devil. And then that immediately just gets captured.
Yeah, I mean, look, this Guido, the side gate's basically unguarded. So Guido is just providing a distraction in case the guards decide to go around the corner, which they probably wouldn't.
Well, I guess they just don't want them to see the doctor go around the corner, right?
Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to poke holes. Look, I mean, it's just a joke. I'm trying to poke holes in it just because it's kind of funny, but because I didn't have much else to say about this episode. But don't tell anyone.
I'm going to make that little whisper really loud so that it's not a whisper anymore in post. The doctor gets in. He's like, oh, what's up? And then he pulls out his psychic paper, except it's not because he handed the psychic paper to Rory. And Rory's like, hey, this says I'm your eunuch. She's like, oh, yeah, I'll explain later. and he pulls out what he thinks is a psychic paper, but it's actually a library card featuring a picture of the first Doctor on it, which was taken from the Celestial Toymaker. Fun fact.
Right. So he's surrounded by these 5 girls who go to the school, and they all have strange teeth.
Yeah.
Vampire teeth.
That was the other thing that scared Guido earlier, is that Francesco, when he knocked Guido down, bared his teeth at him. He's like, what the hell?
Right. There's this, and if I don't mention it now, I'm gonna probably forget. But there's this scene later that's this is one of the scene. This is one of these scenes of like the writer is like, oh man, people are gonna really notice if I don't point this out. So they try and detail the perception filter and why it sometimes works on their teeth and sometimes doesn't. When really that's something that like 99% of watchers are just not gonna care or not gonna pick up on. And even if you do pick up on, you're just not gonna care.
I cared so little I forgot what their explanation was and wasn't even paying attention.
Same here. But it's there if you want it.
And then I remember actually suddenly snapping back to reality, and I was like, they just explained why it doesn't cover their teeth. Oh well. Don't care. Moving on. The Doctor, because he's surrounded by these women, he's like, gotta get out. So he runs out, back through the gate he came.
And part of this plan also involves Amy going and enrolling in the school or whatever.
This is a later plan. This is a secondary plan, because then the Doctor escapes, and then Guido's like, there's another way in through this trap door, except you have to open it from the inside. And then the Doctor's like, so that means we need someone on the inside. And then Amy's like, well, what about me? Yeah, right. I'm a girl. This happens right after the Doctor escapes, and they go to Guido's house.
They go back to Guido's house.
They're like, let's go to Guido's house and figure this out. And
Rory's totally against it.
Well, he's against it because the Doctor's like, I'll pretend to be your dad. And she's like, you look the same age as me. He's like, all right, fiancé. And Rory's like, no, I'm not okay with you pretending to be her fiancé.
Okay, there was actually kind of a funny line here where Guido was like, actually, I thought you were her fiancé in regards to the Doctor. I thought it was kind of funny, at least.
And Rory's like, what? What? Poor Rory. Kind of getting shafted, really.
Yeah.
He has a good moment later on. When this plan is put into motion, actually, that I really want to talk about, because I think it's really important.
Maybe. I guess I just completely glossed over it, because I didn't think he had any good moments in this. And I thought his character honestly just dragged down the episode.
Bring it up now, because it happens now when they go into the scene. But Roy confronts the Doctor, and he says, look, you're actually not a good person. Because you take these people on journeys, and basically you don't know it, you don't realize it, but you make them want to impress you. And by doing so, you make them dangerous. They take a lot of risks. They basically threaten to kill themselves, and that's your fault, Doctor. Whether you realize it or not, that's on you, and that means you're not a good person. The Doctor just brushes us off, but Roy's right.
Yeah. The physical acting, I think, from Matt Smith here indicates that the Doctor is like, holy cow, he's right, and I've never realized this. But, he does just sort of brush it off, so I'm guessing this is something that's going to be touched on later in the season.
Yeah, but I really liked this moment because Rory was... I almost said the Rory. Rory is calling out the Doctor on this, a lot sooner than any other companion did. We know Martha called him out on this.
Tegan and Tegan didn't want to be around death, which is somehow related to this.
But this is Rory's first journey in the TARDIS, and he sees it right away, and he just stands up and calls the Doctor out on it. He, just straight up says to the Doctor, look, this isn't okay. Look at what Amy's doing right now. She's pretending to be a girl to get into this coven of basically what we think are, vampires, or at least,
in some way.
Dangerous aliens or dangerous people, because she wants to impress you. And that's on you, Doctor.
Or maybe not so much impress. I think the term he uses is doesn't want to let you down.
He uses the word impress specifically.
Okay.
Because I wrote down the exact quote. You make them want to impress you.
Yeah. I know he says let down at some point too, which is interesting. Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is all just an interesting thread.
It's an interesting thread that I don't believe gets dropped. It does get picked up quite a bit later.
And it's not something the show has ever really touched on as directly as it does right now.
Yeah, I mean, we've gotten hints the Doctor's a bad person because he turns them into warriors, or he turns his companions into fighters or whatever. But this is the reason why you do that is because they want to impress you.
Right.
So...
I have to see where they go with this from here.
And the reason why Rory picked up on it is because when they see... I think the scene happens before this, but Francesco basically bites into the neck of this flower girl. And this is kind of the catalyst behind them thinking that these are vampires of some sort, because but when Amy hears the scream, she immediately turns around and starts running away, and Rory's like, what's going on? She like runs towards it, and he's like, what are you doing?
Yeah, that's also the thing is Amy has been shown to be a really proactive companion, right? I've even said, I think I said in Victory of the Daleks, she's almost more Doctor-like than the 11th Doctor. And that's all. This thing with Rory and the Doctor works here because of how Amy was established as being that way.
Right.
And yeah, she does just run to. And this is weird because you watch Doctor Who for hundreds of episodes and you're like, all right, they run towards danger. It's not that weird. But like and Rory brings this up, like that is really weird, right?
Yeah. That's not your normal response. Normally you're like, danger, run away, or
like a mild curiosity, and then you run
call
away.
for help, and you're like, 911, I need help, danger. Yeah, that's one of the other reasons I like Rory's, because he comes in and he's just like, Doctor, this isn't okay. Like, this isn't okay. And Rory really gets shafted a little later. I think in the next story, immediately, like, or in a couple stories, he starts calling Rory Pond instead of the natural way, which would be to call Amy Williams when they get married. Once they get married, the Doctor starts to refer to Rory as Rory Pond, as like a demeaning, like, you're second rate to Amy, Rory. And he's like, wow, it's Rory Williams, Doctor. Rory Williams.
Okay, and there's that sounds kind of weird. Well, I mean, I'll have to see. Whatever.
I mean, it's like a power thing, right? That was always... Taking the surname of your partner is always like, I guess, submitting yourself to them. It's a very patriarchal thing because you always take the man's surname. Whatever that's...
in quote-unquote Western, again, what does that mean, societies? But, like, there are many different...
Of course.
Like, you look into other, like, types of societies and, like, what people do with their names in regards to marriage or just even in regards to, like, social changes in general or, like, economic changes and stuff like that is a lot different than what you might expect.
Right.
Or, like, what an American or what a British person might expect.
It's just interesting. They bring that up later. But anyway, moving along with the plot, Amy gets in. They let her in. Rory pretends to be her brother, but they suspect something's up. Because they're like, where did these people come from? And they realize because they can see through the psychic paper. Right.
They come up with this backstory that they were referenced, or they referred to the school by the King of Sweden or something like that. And they look at the psychic paper, and you don't find this out now, but it doesn't work on them. Mm-hmm. So they know that they're lying.
Because they know how to see through a perception filter, basically. Right. And we also see that, okay, so they start to escape. They run away, but they get Isabella first. They're able to get to Isabella, and they start running out to escape. And the Doctor, this is funny, I think Guido's wearing Rory's shirt because Rory needed another outfit to sneak into the school, and Guido's wearing Rory's shirt while rowing the boat. And I was like, okay. And it looks like it's like really strained to fit Guido's much more muscular body. And they're running to escape, and they're able to get out through the side door, but Isabella gets captured by the rest of the girls. They like drag her back in, basically. Right. And Guido's like, no, Isabella, no. And she gets dragged back in, and the Doctor and them escape, and they're like, damn, we were so close. And... Right,
pretty soon after this, Isabella actually dies. I didn't see this coming. I thought she was going to get rescued at the end.
I didn't see this coming either. They throw her...
She basically walks the plank into a pool full of... You can tell it's full of something dangerous, but you don't know what yet.
More of the creatures that these people are, you find out later.
Yeah.
Well, actually, you find out now, because Francesco's like... Better change your perception filter before you fall. This is like foreshadowing for later on. Better change your perception filter in case you fall in, Rosanna, Mom. Otherwise, my brothers will think they're being fed twice today.
Yeah.
Which is, again, foreshadowing for later.
I think during this entire sequence, the chase sort of sequence where Isabella's recaptured almost, you see the perception filter, I think, get distorted for a few seconds, and you see Rosanna's actual form. And this alien looks really cool. Mm-hmm. Really like how this is done.
It looks really fancy. It looks like they have a huge Victorian-era collar, but it's actually like spikes and, I guess, like skin.
And they're almost like a spider, like a... God, there's a term for this, and we actually brought it up in Runaway Bride, but like that mythical creature that's like half human, half spider, like a centaur, but with a spider body.
Yeah.
Yeah, kind of looks like that almost.
Their face is kind of eel-like, almost.
Yeah. Like Prisoner Zero-like.
Yeah. apparently the production notes on the wiki are like, there's a statue that looks like Prisoner Zero. And I'm like, it probably just looks like these aliens, really. And now the Doctor's like, well, they're not vampires, but they're definitely aliens. Because they're afraid of the sunlight, because the Doctor takes this big, huge UV light with him when they go into the catacombs, I guess.
Yeah.
And he pulls it out, and Rory's like, oh, yours is bigger than mine. And I was like, wow, Moffat. Wow, Toby. You think you're so funny. Because Rory's got this little pen light.
Yeah.
I'm like, wow. So they go back to Guido's house, and now they're like, well, what do we do? And the vampires attack.
Yeah, they're on the second story, but they come in through the window.
Yeah, Rory's like, aren't we on the second story? And the Doctor's like, oh, shoot, you're right. And he wards them off with the UV light.
Right, but Guido goes back in and sacrifices himself, I guess.
Rip Guido. This is the part of the story where I actually zoned out a little bit.
I guess, I mean, I didn't put them on my death count, but I guess the girls die.
Do they?
I mean, the house, if I remember correctly, the house blows up. I wasn't too engaged by, what, the whole thing in general, but definitely the latter half, so I don't remember fully. Because Guido definitely dies. He definitely takes himself out.
Yeah.
So I guess the 5 girls die as well, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, there's a scene also around here where the Doctor just chills on Rosanna's throne right after Isabella dies.
Right, this is the scene where they explain why the perception filter sometimes works on their teeth and sometimes doesn't, but again, it's just like the writer being too much in their own head about this.
This is a scene where basically she chastises the Doctor for running away from his entire race dying, and she's willing to sacrifice a city to save her race, whereas the Doctor was willing to sacrifice nothing, and he kind of just stays silent at this.
Yeah.
Referring to the Time War again.
She tries to side with the Doctor, too, because she's like, well, fellow alien on Earth.
Well, he's like, I'm a Time Lord, and she's like, you should be in a museum.
She should have sided with the pteroleptals. They're still at the bottom of the lake at this point, whatever, Loch Ness, I think it was. It's 1580.
The Silurians are still underground, so...
Yeah, plenty of other aliens on Earth at this point.
Probably still some Zygons bumming around. Anyway... The Doctor's just like, no, we're not going to team up. I'm going to stop you because you're trying to kill everybody in the city and you just killed Isabella. So
it's the lamprey hidden behind that rock or whatever it was.
And she's just like, well, you can just try and stop me. And the Doctor runs away, and then she calls up her people and look, we got to accelerate the storm, basically. Her plan is to drown the city, basically.
Right. She wants to turn, because basically her plan is that,
which is questionable at best,
well,
and
it's that
broken at worst.
It's kind of like the Rachnosses in some ways. Only the males of her race survived, except for her, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So they need obviously a way to continue the species, and I guess it's sexual reproduction. So they're like, well, we need to transform these girls into our own, basically. And that's why the school is only for girls. It's why they're basically kidnapping girls.
Right.
And I guess that's why they sort of, and this is where they sort of touch on it, where they bring the storm to Venice. It's like she closed off Venice she quarantined them from the rest of the world, and she's going to turn Venice into her breeding ground, essentially.
Yeah, because the Doctor says that the aliens, called the Saturnians or whatever.
I forgot what they're called, yeah.
Can't survive on land very long,
mm-hmm.
which is why all the other children are living in the water behind the house, I guess.
Right.
And so she wants to basically flood the city so that they can just kill all the people and feed on them and breed, basically.
Yeah.
Doc's like, I'm not going to let you do that. Anyway, then the scene happens with the house and Guido blowing himself up to kill all the girls.
Yeah, the plan basically initiates, Rosanna starts, I forget how she was doing this, but she's bringing this storm to Venice.
She's got this mechanical electronic device. Every time we say Rosanna, I just think of the Toto song, Rosanna.
Just think of Roseanne, the sitcom that was brought back and then canceled and might be coming back now.
Yeah, Rosanna's better than that song. Sounds like Rosanna, Rosanna. Weezer did a cover of it to troll everyone. They're like, you should cover Africa. And then they covered Rosanna instead. And they're like, haha, got you. But then they ended up covering Africa anyway, so.
Wow.
So the Doctor, Amy, and Roy run out. And
the Doctor runs around and basically fixes the problem. I forget exactly how he does that, but he uses the bell tower.
They split up first off.
This is actually also where the scene between Rory and the Doctor happens.
No, this is where a follow-up scene happens because Rory wants to go with him, and the Doctor's like, oh, 20 minutes ago you were all, they want to impress you and they're going to die, and now you're all like, well, I want to help. No, you two go away. Go back to the fucking TARDIS. Clearly he was affected by Rory's words because he commands both of them to go back to the TARDIS and wait for the Doctor to finish this.
Yeah, Rory thanks him for that.
Yeah, he says thanks. And they run off, but then they get attacked by Francesco. And, well, Francesco starts stalking Amy, and Amy's like, get away. And Rory's like, hey, come over here, come over here. And then he's like,
to Star Wars kid him.
Yeah, but then he actually succeeds. He's like, the only thing I've seen uglier than you is your mother. And Francesco's like, what?
Well, then they have this fight with the broom, right? He picks up the broom, and this is, what I mean. He tries to Star Wars kid him with, like, he does the sort of broom tricks. But then,
doesn't work.
Yeah, because Francesco has a sword.
Yeah, sword versus broom. Typically, sword's going to win. Broom is...
Doomed.
Amy kills Francesco, though. Oh, shoot. I should mark that down.
Yeah,
she's
Amy's on the kill count now. I forgot about that.
So Amy's on the kill count, which I haven't updated in a while.
Her first kill.
Baby's first kill. She seems no remorse. Oh, she shows no remorse over this either. She seems completely unfazed. She just kills him and walks away. Right, and I'm like, whoa.
Maybe she's killed before. We don't know.
Maybe she's a serial killer.
She's killed humans, but...
Ooh, boy. I don't remember how she kills him, though.
She shines a light on him by using a mirror, I think.
Yeah, I think that's
what it blows him up.
Because of the sunlight, I think.
Yeah. It's like when you use a magnifying glass against ants. Not that I've ever done that.
I've never done that either.
Oh, yeah.
You burn the ants using the magnifying glass? It's a bit sadistic, actually.
Yeah, it is.
And...
I saw a bunch of ants the other day scrambling,
yeah, well, it's eggs. Ant season. There's ants freaking everywhere.
Well, something obviously happened to these ones' nests because they were holding their eggs and they were, running around all over the place, but whatever.
And the Doctor is at the bell tower, basically, and he climbs up the bell tower. He basically just deactivates the generator. This is just what happens. He deactivates the generator. Amy and Rory smash the control panel, and that's it. The storm goes away.
Yeah. This is one of those things where it's like, I don't know for sure, right? Otherwise, we would have included it in the behind-the-scenes stuff. But this is one of those things where, like, the writer's like, oh, shoot, how do we end this? How do we put a twist at the end? And they just can't. There's just no twist that can happen at the end. So they just follow through with the plan.
They make it to the top. They free, and then the Doctor confronts Rosanna because she's like, I have nothing. She tries to transform back to her original form, but her perception filter is broken because the Doctor broke it with the sonic screwdriver, and she's standing at the edge of her pool of children, I guess, and the Doctor's like, dang it, don't die. There's no point in you dying. She's like, yes, there is. I have no way to repopulate anymore. I just wanted to sacrifice one city to save my species, and now we're all going to die. You did that, Doctor. You've condemned us all to death. Then she just jumps in and dies. She gets eaten by her children, which is quite a way to go when you really think about it.
Yep.
Earlier, we've got a scene with Rosanna mentioned to the Doctor. I think it was when he was sitting on the throne. Because we don't see any cracks in time in this story, but she mentions to the Doctor that they saw all the cracks in the universe, and through many of them, they saw silence. Which comes back right now, right when they get back in the TARDIS, because Rory's like, just take me home. I don't want to be involved in this. And Amy's like, no, I want you to come with. The Doctor's like, fine with me.
Yep, so Rory is now a companion. And here's what I thought was interesting about that is Rosanna says that, some of the cracks they saw were as big as the sky, and some of them were barely even noticeable. So the end of this story is, zooms in on the TARDIS keyhole. Mm-hmm. And I thought there was going to be like a mini crack in the keyhole. I guess there's not, because it just goes right to the credits.
No, but when trying not to spoil anything, when you know the resolution to this plot thread, that's very interesting that it zooms in on the TARDIS keyhole. Right before they get in the TARDIS, the whole city goes silent.
Right.
And the Doctor's like, do you hear that, Rory? He's like, yeah, I don't hear anything. He's like, yeah, silence.
It's a sweet sound of silence.
And then we hear a replay of Rosanna's words, silent. We saw silence through the cracks.
That was a little in your face. They didn't need to replay it. It was like 5 minutes prior to this. So.
Throwing also back to, the cracks, the silence will fall when the Pandorica opens.
Yeah.
And that's how the story ends, actually. We get a preview of next week, which is Amy's Choice next week.
I assume from this preview that it spoils basically everything about the story.
No. You will not be able to guess the resolution to next week's story, and I can already tell you will be extremely
Looks good,
something.
though. Looks good.
It's got what's his name? The guy who plays the... what's his name?
What?
He's a really famous British actor. I'll remember his name next week.
I probably don't know him.
The guy who plays kind of like the villain next week. I'm forgetting the actor's name now. He was in Sherlock, and he's a really famous British actor. He was in Captain America, too.
Yeah, I mean, I doubt I know him, but sure. I'll put it in the notes.
Anyway, that's the end of this week's story. I don't actually have much more to say on this. The big thing that I wanted to talk about, which I did talk about, was Rory confronting the Doctor about this whole thing. Like, you make companions want to impress you. You make them want to be good for you.
Right.
Which, we've had this thing before where we've confronted, like, the Doctor makes his companions into soldiers or to bad people. But we've never, the show's never explored why that happens. And I think this is the first time, and I think it's a good thing, the first time we're really exploring this because we're looking at this and they're going, this is why it happens, because they want to impress the Doctor. They want to do X, Y, and Z.
Well, plus, also, when the Doctor's been called out for this in the past, it's been by the villains. It's really never been like a companion saying, like, hey, this is what you're doing to us.
Right. It's never been someone so close to the Doctor being like, this is what's happening. How could you not see it? Like, this is what's happening.
Right.
And I think that's a really important step. I really want to see where they're going with this because I don't quite remember, but I really want to see what's going to happen with this. The other things I want to say is just that this story really was kind of just mediocre.
Yeah. And that's, I think, kind of why I didn't like it. And this is moving, I guess, a little into what I wanted to talk to, which is the love triangle that was a big part of this episode. Mm-hmm. Is that's, like, when I watched it, I was like, all right, that's a huge part of the episode. And I don't like that, but fine, there's other stuff going on. But thinking back on it, that was the bulk of the episode. That was kind of the main part of the episode. The rest of this is sort of just almost in the background, I want to say. Like, it's not too in-depth of a story. It's just an alien. Like, it's things we've seen before on Doctor Who, right? An alien trying to restart its species. An alien using Earth for its own purposes. And yeah, I mean, a lot of that is part of why this wasn't too great, in my opinion.
It was very the prototypical Doctor Who story.
Right.
Alien wants to restart its race. They have to kill humans to do it.
And they've been hiding. They're hiding on Earth, and they're masquerading as some organization.
They're going to use Earth to restart their species, so on and so forth. Again, the prototypical Doctor Who story. Typically, stories will take it and do something interesting with it. Like when we get the Sycorax, the Doctor's knocked out for the whole story, and everyone's panicking because they don't know what's going on. Right? There's always something usually interesting. In the story, we don't really get that. We get a little bit of it with this conversation between Rosanna and the Doctor, where she's like, "You watched your species die, but I'm willing to save mine."
Right.
And that's really all we get, though.
Yeah.
But again, touching on the Time War, kind of showing that the Time War isn't going away just yet.
Yeah.
Still there in the back of our minds, as I think it should be. I don't think it necessarily needs to be as prominent as it did in the Russell T era, but it should. It was a really big defining moment that does leave the Doctor as the last of his species, at least. So.
Sure. Yeah.
And had repercussions beyond the Time Lords. Like we saw in the very first episode in Rose that the Autons were looking for a new home planet because their home planet got destroyed in the Time War.
Yeah.
So.
That's really all I have for this one.
That's all I've got too. If you would like to email us, you can reach us at thedoctor@decorativevegetable.com. Questions, comments, concerns, angry rants, love letters, your thoughts on Rory joining the TARDIS. You can find us on Apple Podcasts and Google Play at Trust Your Doctor. Please leave a rating if you like the show.
Check us out on Facebook, Trust Your Doctor. Like us on Facebook. Also check us out on Twitter at TYD Podcast and follow us on Twitter. And next time we're watching Amy's Choice. But until then, the end.